Good morning. Well, today we're going to start talking about shining your light, shining the light of Jesus. And we're going to talk about, today is we're particularly going to focus on shining the light of Jesus around the world. Now, over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about different places we can shine our light, different ways to shine our light. But today it's shine your light and shining your light, shining the light of Jesus around the world. Well, to get that going, why don't we start with a song? And this is 2173 in the little black hymnals. And it's Shine, Jesus, Shine. So if you can, let's stand and let's sing together, Shine, Jesus, Shine. Amen. If you would go ahead and be seated. Well, in shining the light of Jesus and being able to share in the fellowship of the believers and shine the light of Jesus that he gives us, that we can shine to those around us. Let's go through and talk about the things that are going to be upcoming, our announcements, those sorts of things. So first, I want to thank everybody who's helping in the service today. There are a lot of people who do a lot of things on a Sunday morning, so I want to thank everybody who's doing those things. And just there, you know, it really is neat to just see kind of everybody just do things and help things and get things going on Sunday morning. And that's one way to serve. You can see the folks that are serving today. And so thank you. And those serving next week, if you would just make sure that's on your calendar. Well, we want to just welcome all those who are joining over Zoom live or joining later on as you watch this broadcast later. Want to thank you for being here, and also just it's awesome that we get to worship together. So glad you were here. If you would, just make sure you stay on mute the whole time.
I have to tell you a story about a pastor first. This young pastor came to the church, and after services were over, he was out greeting people as he's leaving, and the little boy came up and says, "Minister," says, "if I was wealthy, I'd write you a check for $100,000. And the minister says, "Well, that's fine, son, but why would you want to do that?" "Because my dad says you're the poorest preacher we've ever had." Seriously, God has blessed us with kids. And when he first came here, we were a struggling congregation, and didn't even know if we were going to survive or not. Our bank account was down to almost nothing, and our congregation was 12, if we was lucky, on a Sunday. And now look around, God has blessed us. And so, Reverend, for all you do for us, appreciate it. Yeah, I think maybe Tom and his mother-in-law maybe had a little influence on that, but
It's a carrot.
carrot cake.
Oh.
Instructions for carrot.
Yeah.
I'm about to tear up here. Not just because the carrot cake, but thank you.
Don't think there's enough to go around to everybody, but it's well. And also on behalf of the congregation, Andrea and Jason has been doing a wonderful job with our youth group. They meet every Wednesday. They play games, they eat a meal, they study scripture. They're just doing an awesome job. So, you bet.
It's kind of hot in here. Well, thank you all very much, and Alan, thank you. We'll talk later about that porous pastor thing, but no, but really, thank you all very much, and it is a real joy to serve God together, but thank you for that, Alan. Thank you all. Well, as we think about that good news, and as we think about how just even in our prayer time, we know that God loves us and is listening to us and acts on our prayers, that's a story we can tell. That's something that we need to make sure that the people around us know that good news, both just around here and across the world. So let's continue our worship with singing, and this will be 569 in your hymnals. We have a story to tell the nation. The words will also be on the screen. So if you can, let's stand and let's sing, we have a story to tell to the nation. So we are going to be, over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about what we're starting today, and that is spreading the good news of Jesus Christ, shining the light of Jesus, shining the light of Jesus. And that's, we're going to take a lot of it from, a lot of you have seen this, particularly on the board, that we put together a rekindling evangelism, and we're going to be kind of going through that. Part of that is that that's just something we all need to remember. We all need to remember that there is good news, and that we need to share that good news of Jesus Christ. Also, it's important to be able to know how to do that and what the Bible says about that, because I think a lot of us get confused about that, or there's some misunderstanding about that. The Bible tells us pretty clearly how we can do that, and then how God helps us do that. We want to focus on that so that you know. So we're going to be talking about that, shining the light of Jesus, and we're going to be talking about that, shining it across the world. We're going to talk about shining it in our own neighborhood, shining it around here. And we're going to start with shining the light of Jesus around the world. And to do that, we have our missionary, the missionary that we support, Danielle. And again, we talked about the kids. A lot of you know Danielle, but those of you that don't, Danielle is from here. She felt the call to be a missionary and went through all of the training and all that. And now for 3.5 years has been our missionary in Croatia. So Danielle's back for a month or so, month and a half, something like that, back for a little while. And thank you for fitting us in, being able to come here and talk with us. But now let's hear from our missionary, who is out on the front lines, shining the light of Jesus Christ around the world. So Danielle.
Okay, well, guys, thank you so much for having me today. Like you said, my name is Danielle Hardcastle, and it's always so nice to be back in Glenwood, Tabor, Malvern area. It's just, there's nothing quite like just being home and visiting churches around your home and seeing the people that you know. And it's always really, really special. I go other places in Iowa in the next few weeks, but this is really special for me. So I'm glad to be here. And like Pastor said, I am a missionary in Croatia. And if you go on to the next slide. Okay, no problem. So, who here has heard of Croatia? Okay, wow, very good. And if you haven't, because I'm pretty sure everybody has, but Croatia was a country in the Balkan region that during the time Yugoslavia broke up into, in the wars in Yugoslavia, it broke up into a few different countries, and Croatia is one of those countries. And so, if you go to the map, actually, I'll show you where Croatia is. It'll be just a few back. Yeah. There you go. So Croatia is right over here. You see Italy, and you go right straight east from Italy, and you hit Croatia, and it's a beautiful, beautiful country. There's about 1,300 islands, I want to say. It's either 1,200 or 1,300 islands. It's got this beautiful coastline, and it's just a wonderful country. It's got 4 million people, and I live in the capital city of Zagreb, which is 1 million people. And in Zagreb, for the last 3.5 years, I've been working on a few different projects. And one of those things is we have a church plant in Croatia. And this church plant, although it's in Croatia, it has a few people from Croatia. We're really an international church. And so if you go on to the next slide. No problem. So, we are an international church, like I said, and we have some people from Croatia, but then we also have people from all over the world that come to our church. And we have our services in English because there's so many people from different countries. And I listed some of them here. So we got Croatia, of course, the United States, Albania, Germany, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Burundi, the Democratic of the Congo, Republic of the Congo, Egypt, Syria, Gaza, Iran, Afghanistan, Russia, Ukraine, and I also forgot to put Nigeria up there. And I might be missing some others because in this list, I'm not just counting the people who have come right now or who are coming right now to our church, because our church has really gone through a lot of phases in Croatia. If you go on to the next slide. this is what our church building looked like. We still have this building, but we mostly use it for small groups and storage now. But this is before I came to Croatia, before I came to Croatia during COVID. So before COVID, this is where our church had all of our services. And most people say it looks like a bathroom. Do you guys agree? That's a lot of the feedback we get. It looks like a bathroom. But in this room, this was a picture taken from one of our small groups that we had right after I moved to Croatia. But then also, before I came to Croatia, they would have about 50 people in this room, 70 people. Not just in this room, there's a couple doors that you don't see, and there's standing room outside the building and then in the hallway a little bit. And they would just pack people in. And that was because when our church started in Croatia, there was a huge wave of refugees that started to come through Croatia. And those refugees came at the time, when the wave of refugees started, there was a lot of refugees coming from Syria, from Iran, but really from all over the place, from Afghanistan. And we're talking millions of people who were making the refugee journey from their home countries into Europe to find asylum. And so at the time, there's this huge refugee crisis. So many people were coming, and the church saw this need to minister and to help refugees that were coming through Croatia. And so they started to do that, and pretty soon the church became a refugee church. And almost the entire congregation, other than a couple families from Croatia and the missionaries that were there, were all refugees. The people from Iran, from Syria, from Afghanistan, all who are coming and seeking asylum in Croatia. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. But if you go on to the next slide, this was our church when I got to Croatia. So at first they had the services in the bathroom, we'll call it. We actually call it the hub. And then after that, because of COVID, we weren't able to have services inside. And so we went to the park, and we brought tables and we brought benches, and we just had our service amongst all of people going about their day in the park, having birthday parties. And it was a fun time. We didn't have a church building other than the small one that we couldn't use because of COVID. But it was fun for a time, because we would go and people would come and stop by, and they would listen to the services for a little bit. We would still sing and everything, and people would listen. They would go about their day. But it was a fun time. But then it got cold, and we can't stay outside when it's that cold. And so if you go on to the next slide, this is our church that we're using now. There's another church in Zagreb that rents us the space in the evenings. And so for the last couple of years, this is where we've been having our church services. And we're still looking for a building. We're hoping to buy one to have our own church, or we're looking to buy property to build a church. But for now, this is our church home. And if you go on one more slide. So like I said, the church has been primarily made up of refugees in Croatia. And this journey that refugees take, it's a long, long, hard journey. And you have people from all over many different countries coming to Croatia for many, many different reasons. It could look like they're coming because of war, or they're coming because of religious persecution, or because of domestic abuse. But so many people have made their way from their home countries, and for whatever reason, it wasn't safe for them to be there, and they came to Croatia. And that's where our church has been serving for the last almost 10 years. And so in Croatia, in 2022, it says there are 16,000 refugees, and it says 1,077 asylum seekers. And these are big numbers, but really the numbers are much bigger than this, because many refugees, they're on a journey. They start in their home country, and they make their way to Croatia, and usually that's not where they're stopping. Usually they're going to go on to other countries like Germany, to Austria, maybe to France, to the UK, and that's just because they're looking for a place that's safe, that there's opportunities for them to have a decent life where they're going to settle down, and also a place that will offer them asylum. And so really the numbers are much bigger than this, because people will come through Croatia and they don't register as asylum seekers. They just come through Maybe they stay for a few days and then they leave. And so really, I couldn't tell you the actual numbers, but I know it's bigger than these. And so I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like to be a refugee. And I can't really say that because I've never experienced living in a place that wasn't safe and secure. But over my 3 years in Croatia, I've met many, many people with many stories of why they've had to leave their homes. And I'm just going to share a couple of stories. And so the refugee journey, we say, could look like the story of Mary. Mary is from Gaza. And I'm sure you guys have all been hearing of Gaza. Mary left Gaza years ago. She didn't leave in this recent wave of fighting, but Mary was growing up in Gaza, and it's where she experienced a lot of violence because of war, because of fighting. And even as a teenager, her mom was killed in a bombing. As she was pushed outside the house, her mom was killed there. And later on, she was married off to a man who was very, very abusive. And so not only did she experience lots of trauma and violence living in Gaza, but she also experienced a lot of violence and trauma after she was married off to her now ex-husband. And her ex-husband, they came to Croatia with their son, and he was very abusive to her, very violent. And eventually he left them. He left her, Mary and her son. And she was left with absolutely nothing. And Mary, of course, being from Gaza, the vast majority of people are Muslim, and she was as well. And she wore hijab. She was a very devoted Muslim. But when her husband left her, she had nothing, no money, nothing. She had no place to go. She had already received asylum in Croatia, but she didn't have money to pay for an apartment or anything. And so we got word of Mary, and we went and helped her a little bit. We just went and visited her, and somebody had helped her pay for an apartment for 1 month. And then after that, she had no idea what she was going to do. She thought that she would end up on the streets. And even when she called her dad for help, her dad told her, "I don't care if you end up on the streets. Go live on the streets for all I care." And so when we went and we sat down with Mary, we started talking to her, and we saw in her apartment, she didn't have blankets, she didn't have plates, she didn't have anything, she didn't know what she was going to do. And she just started to cry, and she poured out all of this, all of her story, and all of the things that were going on. And she told us about how she came from Gaza to Europe, how she had to ride the boats because many refugees ride rafts from Greece into Turkey, from Turkey into Greece. And these rafts, people, they just shove a lot of people onto, and it's not safe, and many of them don't make it to Greece. They sink, and there's no help for the people who are on those, and so many, many people die that way. But she was one that made it. And after that, she experienced so much abuse from her husband. Her husband beat her up and tried to take her son. And she just started to pour out all of this. And then after a while, we after talking and visiting, we said, "We're going to help you. We're going to help you pay for your apartment for now, help you get a job so you can do it yourself, be self-sufficient." And we know that you know that we're a church, but you don't have to come to church because Mary was Muslim. And we didn't want her to know that if she wanted help, she had to come to church. That there was my pastor in Croatia says, we don't sneak Jesus in between sandwiches. We don't have a second agenda. We want to help you because we see that you're in help, or that you're in need of help, and God calls us to help people. And so she decided on her own after that she wanted to come to church. And part of that was because she knew people who spoke her language, Arabic. She could speak with people. She had friends there. And so she started to come to church, and she found community there. And she wasn't interested in Christianity. All she wanted to do was hang out with people and have a community to go to. And so she kept coming to church over the months. And then she started to come early to church. And she would make the tea and the coffee for everybody. And after a while, she started to say, the church is my family. And still she wasn't interested in Christianity, but she found community. And then after a while, she started to say, well, I'm a little bit interested, but before I make any decisions, I want to know everything there is to know about Christianity. And so then we started to do some individual Bible studies with her. And after a while, she was still interested, but still asking lots of questions. And one day, she was at her job, she was working in a kitchen, and she had this problem come up that seemed like it couldn't be solved. And it was a problem with custody with her son. And she had no idea what to do. And in that moment, she just decided, in complete helplessness, she decided she's going to close the doors and she's going to pray. She's going to pray to God. And she prayed and she said, God, if you see me, if you want me, I need you to fix this situation. I need you to come into this. And she went back to work. 15 minutes later, she got a call from a lawyer. The whole situation was completely solved. I mean, it went from looking completely impossible to not even a problem. And she came to us that evening, and we saw her, and she told us the story, and then she said, I don't believe in Jesus 50% or 60%. I believe in Jesus 100%. It was a beautiful story, and since then she's continued to come to church and grow in her faith, and she has a beautiful son, a beautiful life, and we're very grateful to have her in our community. She's been such a blessing. But Mary is just one story of what it looks like to be a refugee. Sometimes it looks like coming from a Muslim country, seeking asylum, coming from a country in war, seeking asylum, and coming to church and finding Christ. Sometimes it looks like people just passing through Croatia, and we get to know them for just a little bit of time. Like the story, it's a story of a girl named Sophie. And Sophie was from the Congo, and she came to Croatia because her mom sent her away. She was supposed to be married. She was engaged. They had done the dowry and everything. And then after that, they broke off the engagement. And a lot of cultures around the world, are you guys familiar with honor-shame cultures? Basically, in honor-shame cultures, it's usually collectivist cultures where the family unit is very, very strong, and it's your community and what's best for the community is most important. And when you shame your family, when you shame your community, it's a very, very, very big deal. And by breaking off this engagement, she experienced a lot of shame, and she went into depression. And finally, her mom said, you need to go. You need to get away from this situation. And although her mom didn't say, because you've shamed us, she felt in her heart that she had to leave because of all the shame that she had brought on her family. And so Sophie was also a Muslim woman, and she started her journey at just 19 years old, all on her own. And so she traveled from the Congo, that's in Central Africa, all the way eventually to Croatia, and she went to Switzerland first. And she told me when I met her that she had gone to Switzerland, she had sought asylum there, and then she had been deported back to Croatia because there's a law that says you have to seek asylum in the first EU country you arrive in, and most of the time that's Croatia. And so she was deported back to Croatia, and the situation for refugees in a lot of Western European countries versus the Balkans, it's not quite easily comparable. There's a lot more opportunities in some other countries, although Croatia is not a bad country to seek asylum in. But going from Switzerland, she had spent already, I think, 2 years in Switzerland, and she had a community, a church family, and I guess I gave a spoiler. She became a Christian, but I'll tell the story. She had a church family, and she had friends there, and then after 2 years of living there, the government decided that she had to be sent to Croatia to start the asylum process all over again, which takes about 2 to 3 years, roughly. And so when I met Sophie, she had just been deported to Croatia 2 days before, and she came to church. And she decided already that she was going to leave Croatia, that she was going to go back, because a lot of people, like I said, don't stay in Croatia. They go and seek asylum in other countries, so they're just transiting through Croatia. So she decided, I'm going to give it a week, and then I'm gone. And at this point, Sophie had just turned 22, 23, and so we were the same age, and we were hanging out a lot that week. We would go for coffees, we would talk a lot, and as I got to know her story, I tried to talk to her a little bit about staying in Croatia, because what it means to leave is that you would start that asylum process all over again, another 2 to 3 years. And so when I was getting to know Sophie, she told me about all of this story about why she had to leave the Congo. And then she told me about how when she was traveling, many refugees travel through the woods, through the mountains, and they're going at night because they're going across borders when they're really not supposed to, but it's their only way to do it. And so they have to travel at night. It's very dangerous. And for Sophie, as she was walking, she was going with a group, she fell into a hole when she was in Bosnia traveling. And she couldn't get out on her own. And her group went on because it's dangerous. They don't want to get caught by the police. And so they went on and they left her. And so she was 19 years old, 20 years old at the time, and she just started crying out to God. She was Muslim, but she cried out to God, to Jesus. And she didn't want to be left there. She didn't know how to get out. She was in the middle of the woods alone. And then as she cried out to Jesus, there was another group of refugees who were traveling as well from Iran. And they heard her cries, and they came and they helped her out of the hole. And since then, she has been the most devoted person to God that I have ever met. It's what she always wants to talk about. It's just overflowing from her. But she sees that how God has helped her. And even though eventually, after a couple weeks of her being in Croatia, she decided that she needed to leave. And I'm not sure where she is now. She might be back in Switzerland. She might be in Germany. I'm not sure. But in that time that I got to know her, we got to become friends. I got to know her story, and we got to learn just more about what it means for her to be a refugee. But we also got to plant seeds into her life. Although she was already Christian, she was in a really, really hard situation. She was struggling. She had just been ripped away from her first home in Congo, and then also ripped away from her second home in Switzerland. And she didn't know what to do, but we could sit there and we could be friends and we could pray together and we could just show her God's love in a hard moment. And really, when I think about what our church has been doing with refugees in Croatia, that's it. There's nothing special about the work that we do, because we want to go and we want to be a part of the everyday lives of people. And so many of these refugees are coming to church. Most of them are that we're working with in Zagreb. And we now have lots of people from Burundi, from the Congo, from Syria, from Iran. And they've all come for different reasons. But we can go and just be a part of their daily lives, get coffees with them, visit, invite them to our homes, and fellowship together in church. And all of this, it helps to develop community, and it helps people to know that God sees them and God cares about them, and that there's people who see them and care about them. And so then our church has also been working with another group of refugees. And if you go on to the next slide, I want to say everybody here is probably very familiar with the war that's been going on in Ukraine. And since the war started in Ukraine, there's been lots of refugees from Ukraine who have also come to Croatia. And Ukrainian refugees have received lots of help, a warm welcome from many European countries, and it's been amazing to see. It's been amazing to see people open up their homes to them, and it's been amazing to see churches do a lot to help. But then, after a while, once the war started, we saw that our church in Zagreb saw that there was a lot of help for Ukrainian refugees. And so we decided just to keep focusing on the refugees coming from the Middle East and from Africa. And then after a while, about 6 months into the war, we found out about a hotel that was serving as a refugee center. in another town. And because it wasn't in the capital city, there was a lot less resources, but there was about 150 people living in this hotel. And so we started to go to this hotel, and we would teach English, and we would do crafts and games with the kids. And there's about 40 kids that live there, all from baby to 17, 18 years old. And so even now, we go twice a week to this hotel, and we do crafts, and we do games. We do, sometimes if you go on to the next slide, I think I have some pictures up there. We've done knitting with some of the elderly people, taking them out on outings to museums. And then we've also done a kids camp this past Easter. And these are just some of the kids that live there in the hotel. And we did tie-dye shirts, so everyone had their tie-dye shirt on. It was a whole lot of fun. But really, again, with the Ukrainian refugees community that we've been serving, there's nothing special about what we're doing. And I can tell you, it's not about the games, and it's not about the crafts. Do you guys like Uno? Who really likes Uno? Does anybody really, really love it? I would suggest if you're going to go into cross-cultural ministry, learn to love Uno, because I can't tell you how many games of Uno I've played with these kids, because it's easy to explain. The kids love it. I didn't know when I went into missions that Uno would be like the best cross-cultural ministry tool that there is. But it really is. So learn to love Uno if you're going to go to cross-cultural ministry. But really, it's not about the Uno. We go and we haven't been able to do much more than play games and do crafts because there's a language barrier. We can speak in Croatian together, but my Croatian isn't good enough and the kids' Croatian isn't good enough for us to do something really deep, to talk about Bible stories or to talk about what they're feeling. But you can see it in the way that they act. But what we do is that we go and we do these games, and we do these crafts and activities to show people, once again, that we see them and that we care about them. We care about the situation that they're in. We care that they're going through something very, very difficult. And we want them to know that God loves them and that we can do that through our actions. Although we're not able to always share it with words, we can be there and do life with them and to be there in the hard moments. Even although I was saying that we have the language barrier, there's still times where people try to talk about what they've been going through in Croatian. And just like one lady who a few weeks ago, I was giving her a ride to the capital city. And she had just visited Ukraine. She was going back just for a couple weeks to see people. And I asked if she got to see her family. And she told me that she went and she saw the grave of her daughter because her daughter was killed in the war. Her daughter was 30 years old. And she hadn't been able to be there to see her grave, so she went back to the grave. And then she told me that she's all alone. She's a grandma, and I was teaching me Ukrainian for a little while. And she lives in the hotel on her own, with the community there, but she doesn't have family there. She told me she's all alone. Her daughters had passed from the war. Her father had passed. And she said it's so hard, but that's the way it is. And she's a tough woman. Let me tell you, this lady is so tough, and she's intense. And she started to tear up, and she's just sucked the tears back in. And she said, that's the situation. I'm going to face it. And so those are the moments that we're there for. To be there, to show people that we're there for them, but also that we're there for them in the fun times, to be able to create community and to show that there's people that see their situation, but also in the hard times when they're reflecting on the things that they're going through, how they're separated from their families, how the fathers and the sons and brothers had to stay in Ukraine because of the draft, and how the moms and kids are separated and they don't know when they're going to get home. Those are the things that we're there for, just to be there for them in the hardest moments of their lives, to show God's love and care for them in the hardest moments of their lives. And so then, the last project that I'll be working on, and this is really what I'll be focusing on, I think, when I get back to Croatia in a few weeks. And are you guys familiar with the Roma people? Yeah? So if you're not, the Roma people, they're also known as gypsies, but I use the term Roma because gypsy is often viewed as derogatory within Roma communities, and so we'll just use that. Excuse me. So the Roma people, they migrated from India about 1,000 years ago, and they've been traveling and settling in different countries for a long time. Now Roma people have settled in whatever country in Europe, but Roma people in Croatia specifically, and it's a common experience for Roma people around Europe, but in Croatia specifically, 86% of Roma people are at risk of poverty. And Croatia, although it's not a rich country, that number drops for the general population to 18%. And so you can see that the Roma population, they have a much different reality than the rest of the Croatian population. There's a lot of discrimination against them, a lot of racism. They often live in villages that are just Roma people that are separated from other Croatian towns. But this is the group that I'll be going in and focusing on when I get back to Croatia. And we're able to go into some villages, and we'll be doing kids programs with Roma kids. And we'll be doing Bible stories, and we'll be doing crafts and games. And then I hope that we'll be able to spread that to doing Bible studies with the adults as well. But the Roma population is a group that really needs to experience God's love and care. Like I said, there's a lot of discrimination. Oh, thank you so much. There's a lot of discrimination against them. They experience a lot of hardship. And there's also a lot of violence within the community as well. And a lot of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, kids not finishing school. There's a lot of problems that they're facing. And it's a group that really needs to experience God's love. And so that's what I hope we'll be doing, is that we'll be going and we'll be working with this in a specific village that has about 20, 30 kids in it, and doing these Bible stories and games. And this picture up here is a family that I've been visiting for the last year or so. And the lady in the picture, you can't see her face, but she's my ministry partner there that's been working with Roma for a long time. And so this is something I'd ask for prayers for. And for the sake of time, I'm going to go quicker through this part. But if you have questions about the Roma group, come and ask me. There's so much that we could talk about. It's such an interesting group of people, beautiful group of people, and I'm really excited about the doors that God is opening there. And so, one more slide. Okay, that's one of the family that I've been visiting, some of the crafts we've done, and then also my dad back in the back of the church came to visit this summer and came and did one of the kids clubs with me. And so, okay, one more slide. So when I was thinking about what we do in Croatia and what I've been working on in Croatia, this Bible story came to mind, and I'm going to read it here, and it's on the screen there for you. It's the parable of the Good Samaritan, and it starts in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. It says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this, and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, and he gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." So as I was thinking about what we do in Croatia and what we've been working on in Croatia, I really it's really nothing special. Like I said, we go and we're present in people's lives, coffees, and inviting people over to our homes and just being there for them. Or we go when the people are really hurting and we try to uplift them and to hold their hand as they're walking through some of the hardest moments in their lives. And so when I was thinking again about what we're doing in Croatia, I realized that we're just trying to be good neighbors as God has called us to love Him and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so there's so many people in Croatia. You've heard some of the stories. There's a whole lot more stories of people who are just pushed down and who, from different life circumstances, from war, persecution, abuse, poverty, they're downtrodden and they're hurt. And God calls us to love our neighbor, to see their situation, to help them up, to walk with them, and to help them along their journey, to share God's love and His care with them on their journey. And again, it's nothing special because we all have neighbors, right? God calls us to love our neighbors and to be a good neighbor. And it looks so different. But my challenge for us today, and it's a challenge for myself as well, going back to Croatia, is that as we're going about our days, about our jobs, our school, whatever it is that you're going about in your life, just like the Good Samaritan, he went in as he was going along the path, and he saw the man along his journey that had been hurt, and he stopped, and he went and helped him. And so my challenge is for us to, as we're going along our journey, to look out for the people who are being hurt, the people who are being pushed down and pushed away, and to intentionally show God's love and care for them. And even in my experience so far in Croatia, just being there for a quick conversation, for the drive into the capital city, it can lead to so many beautiful things when people see that they have somebody who sees them, who cares for them, and when especially, and most importantly, they can see that God sees them and God cares for them. Guys, I just want to say thank you for having me today, and I'll close in prayer. And if you have questions about anything that I've talked about or anything with Croatia, just please come and ask me too. But I'll pray and we can close. Dear God, we just thank you so much that we can all be here today. We thank you for this beautiful community in Hillsdale. God, I just ask that your word be written on our hearts as we go about our lives this week and these months. God, help us to have ears to hear and eyes to see, and help us to really reflect on what you're teaching us and how you're leading us. God, help us to be your light in the world, to share your love with the people around us, to be able to stop and see the people who are hurting, and to show your care. God, I just thank you for the work that you're doing. God, I thank you that you go before us. God, I just ask for your help and for your guidance in this challenge to all of us. And in your precious name I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys.
Well, Danielle, thank you very much for coming and spending time with us and sharing with us. Thank you especially for the work you're doing. I would use probably different words. I would say what you're doing may not be really, really unique, but I would say it's very special. So I'm going to ask you to join. We're going to do our going out song, God Be With You. But Danielle, if you could, I'd ask you to join me in the back as everybody leaves and they can say hi to you. So, all right. Well, you guys, what we'll be talking about is shining the light, and what a great example of someone who's shining the light across the world. And what a great way to start us thinking about that. Danielle, thank you for all you do. So if you can, let's stand and let's sing our God Be With You, and that'll wrap up our service for today.